So hi, my name is Maria. I'm also doing stuff in this community garden and the neighborhood that Paulina and Anton talked about. But today I'm going to represent and talk about my other NGO called Linnalabor. It's Estonian Urban Lab, so like the place we're here, but Estonian one. And the neighborhood is actually a neighborhood inside the neighborhood that Paulina and Anton talked about. So it's like a smaller kind of piece. For 2 years, I have been doing community work there. And why I put deprived neighborhood? Well, it's considered deprived and there's a lot of stigma, but it's always a question, do you define it as one or not? So just quickly about Linnalabor, what do we do? So one of the things, we are not connected to one specific neighborhood, we're Estonian Urban Lab, so yes, we are based in Tallinn, but we do a lot of stuff everywhere else. We focus on participatory planning, so we are a network of people from geography, from architecture, landscape architecture, sociology, anthropology, and we do a lot of consultancy for municipalities. So for example, here on the picture, we made this kind of vision, spatial vision for one of the smaller kind of, you can't even call it a city in Estonia. And they asked us to do this, not some just architecture agency, because exactly we specialize in participatory planning, so we engaged people a lot. And what we do is this mediation, so we act as moderators between different stakeholders. So it's good to invite us. We can be this kind of neutral person in between. We also deal a lot with urban education. We do urban walks, so basically it's like excursions. Here it's also me doing excursion in the Lasnaidee neighborhood, workshops and so on. And we have also done some research about understanding communities. And here's just like a small squeeze of our community research that I showed in Riga last time when we went, if you remember. And I think it's very similar to communities everywhere, that usually you have 3-5 leaders and then you have like 10 active members, and if it's too large then it gets kind of not that concentrated. And what also motivates people is a lot cultural development, actually, solving problems less, but it's also very important. And it's basically also the reasons to go on is the same cultural development to keep your community active and dynamic. But yes, I can also share the links later if you're interested in this research. And this was done not only for the urban communities, but also for rural communities. So in Estonia, there is actually a quite long tradition for the rural communities, and the urban ones are later, but they're very they are rising again, let's say. But this Raadiku neighborhood, so this is the work that was actually commissioned by the real estate developer. So that's also the reason I chose to talk about it. It's one and the only precedent in Estonia, as far as I know, where we have been commissioned by, like, not by public sector or not by our own that we wrote the project, but it was a wish of the real estate developer to actually invest in building a community inside the neighborhood where there was, there's a lot of tensions. So they saw that through these soft methods, it's possible to do something good. And that's why they invested. You can understand that if a private developer invests, he needs to find results. And it's, I can say that it was, we took 1 year just for negotiations to get this project started. So it was quite hard. But the area what we talk about, so this is Tallinn, Lasnamäe is this huge neighborhood where we work with Paulina and Anton, and this Raadiku is just this specific place here. Looks like this. It's very concentrated, it's very defined from all the other neighborhoods. And it looks like this. So actually it's new housing. It's built, considerably recently. And there is like a quite interesting scheme behind it, because this is municipal housing. And in general, municipal housing is something quite new. There's little experience in, I think, in Baltics in general with municipal housing. So it's subsidized housing In this case, it's specifically or mostly for families, big families, so a lot of children and those who have financial difficulties. So the city subsidizes this, but it's owned by real estate developer. So they're leasing it by a contract for like 50 years. So that's why actually it's interesting that it's municipal housing, so it's city who has these tenants, but we don't work with the city and we're not commissioned with the city, but actually the real estate developer, which was very interesting that it's real estate developer was more interested in community building than the city at that point initially. So yes, the scheme is quite difficult, but the problematics is that you have this real estate developer. He's the owner, he's leasing the housing to the city. Then you have the city who locates the tenants. So the real estate developer does have no power of who is going to be living in his, houses. And it subsidizes it and also provides social services to the people that are there. And then you have very important stakeholders, this ESS management company, who deals with this daily maintenance and communication with the tenants, and then the tenants itself. So this is our stakeholders that we work with. So the problematics is that if Lasnamäe in general, Pauline and Anton mentioned as stigmas, well, it's Soviet heritage and it's considered ugly and not so nice living space, and you then have Russian-speaking minority, sketchy stuff. Then this place has like a double stigma because it's inside this neighborhood and it's very kind of problematic in many levels. So there's lack of social services, this accumulation of social problems. So you can imagine like if you house 3,000 people who have different kind of social problems, financial problems, and they have a lot of children and the children run around and so anyway, there's a lot of like small scale vandalism. There's quite many police reports of domestic violence. So this place has very negative image in public eyes. So this is what we kind of work with. So the expectations when we started to work from the real estate developer, so basically why they actually commissioned us was to lower the maintenance costs. They didn't like that there's all the time something breaking and there's a feeling that no one takes responsibility because it's hard to pinpoint who actually is done what. And they want that this feeling of responsibility is actually increased because people are there like tenants. So it's like a hotel for them, let's say like that they just get this rent lease and then they expect that you have all the services and then there's management company who takes care of them. So I don't care, I let my dog piss in the elevator and whatever. But this is actually the minority of people who has this kind of, feeling to the space. There's a lot of people who actually want to do something. This is the tenants that we started to work with. So this is just some examples about the neighborhoods. There's children like to challenge the big trees sometimes. But from the tenants, the expectations are that they often feel that their problems are not heard and they don't have any possibility to actually influence how they live because they are tenants, they're not owners, they have no rights basically to, have a say. I don't know if actually in Lithuania you have this association of the house owners when you take responsibility and make decisions. So basically these people don't have this opportunity. Although their agreements are for 2 years and they are prolonged, so you can imagine that people change there a lot, but they're actually people who are there for already 8 years from the beginning when it was built. They are residents, they are full-time and they want to do something, but they don't have a mechanism to actually do it. So there's a lot of this fatigue and disappointment, so difficult stuff. So that's where, we are in the middle. We are trying to be mediator. I put independent because it's a question. Are we like representatives of the owner for the residents? Are we representatives of the residents to the owner? So what are we? How can we actually be independent? So this is just like this, existential question for ourselves. So what do we do actually? We started with a questionnaire in 2 languages. We all the time work in 2 languages, actually, in the neighborhood, also with Pauline and Anton. It was about to understand how people use the space and what are the main 3 problems and main 3 advantages that they see. So we got a bit of experience how people actually perceive their space, and we got a lot of contacts. So these contacts that we gathered, there were not much. From 3,000 residents, it was like a bit over 100 answers. But this was something to start with, and we did first public forums using World Cafe methods. And for us, it was important that people start to think about what could we do ourselves. Okay, we have the problem that someone pisses in the elevator all the time. So what could we do ourselves? It's easy to say, well, the management company has to put like a guard to every person and that just be on every floor and put a lot of cameras, but it's not realistic. There's no resources, human or money, to actually do this. So what could we do something otherwise? And if we can do something, what are the resources that we need in addition? Who do we have to turn to? Where do we have to, ask for help? So this is the questions that we basically educated people how to solve the problems themselves, how they could be more capable of solving them. Because we saw that they are interested, they are very passionate, because, for example, they started to do their own security patrol at some point, because there was like some gangs gathering, and they actually managed to solve some of the problems themselves. Because usually, there's actually 2 Facebook groups that are in this neighborhood, and the usual thing, if something happens, they post the problem, and then everyone is just arguing who is like, oh, you are wrong, and you are wrong, this forum of whining, instead of actually doing something. So that was our goal, to actually start people to do something about it. And that's how we started to grow the network. Yes, we focus more on Facebook because it's the easiest method, and we chose the easiest at the moment. And then we grow it also offline more. And we started to do quarterly meetings. So first of all, we only met with the people, without the managers and without the owners, because otherwise it would have been quite ugly in the beginning, where people just start to ask questions. Why don't you do this, and you're wrong, and you don't do that and that. So we needed people to prepare them a bit earlier, and then we now have quarterly meetings where there's residents, there's the owners and management company. So it's more like an official meeting where we protocol everything. We put it, we audio record, and we do it in a most transparent way, where residents can pose their problems. We, discuss what could be the solutions, and we put certain decisions, we write them down, and we follow them, if they are met or not, because otherwise residents have this feeling that, they can talk what they want, but no one will do anything. So this is really important, that they will see actually that there are some changes been made, even if they're very, very small. And one of the recent things is that we launched this kind of information platform, which has an official information about the contacts. What do you do if someone breaks something? What do you do if you change your apartment in the neighborhood? Who do I turn to when I have problems with my, neighbor or so on? Because there's a lot of this information, and when people don't know something, they started to post on Facebook and invent solutions that were not real, and creating the problems even more. So we found that this kind of official place for information for the specific neighborhood was very important. And this again was the initiative of the real estate developer, who has temporal agreement with the city, not the city itself, so it's quite interesting. And this is something actually that the city does, the city supports it, is this youth activities. Since I mentioned this neighborhood is mainly for the big families, so about 1/3 of the population is youth or children, so there's about 1,000 of children and youth in this quite small complex. So what we started to do from last year is different cultural activities that somehow, first of all, give them possibility to develop, to, learn some new skills, and also to be more present and more responsible to their neighborhood. So, for example, we started to paint those skate ramps with them. We started to do urban gardening, and we started to do urban furniture. And this, for example, urban gardening, when I sometimes post now pictures about we're going to do it again this year, people in this Facebook say, oh, it's not going to work, it's so naive, it's maybe in the small neighborhoods. And then I say, actually, it's already there for 1 year. Like, it's there, there's several plots and no one is vandalizing them in the way that you think. Because this is actually what we realize, that children and adults are diminishing themselves all the time. For example, from the children you can say, oh, what do you want from this place? It is Raadiku, we are from Raadiku. So already in the beginning they are putting themselves already in the stigma because it has been posing on them for so many years. So that's almost that there's nothing good possible to be happening in their neighborhood because it's the neighborhood. So it's this is the challenge that we have to break the stereotype, and it's working because we're experimenting with this. So yeah, the challenges, yeah. There's from the tenants, although we have doing a lot of stuff, there are changes. For them, it's still not visible enough. And there's this fatigue of involvement because there's like a lot of talk and they want bigger changes. But we're moving towards it. Towards this real estate developer, there's still little resources to implement changes. People want to see them bigger. And the management company, well, they are lacking really in high quality management. There's a problem with this company, but for example, even if the real estate developer wants to change this company, there's no other company who wants to take the job. Because it's so, yeah, it's a very challenging job also for the management company. So it's like a loop in there. Well, you can say, oh, this is actually our vice mayor cutting the cake during one of the cultural events. So just wanted to say for the ending that it seems like this kind of problems are in every house, and it's not very something, special in Raadiku, but this thing of how we actually start to make the same mistakes, like, for example, London has done in their, housing estates, where they house just a lot of people with similar social problems and expected that it will work. It's not going to work. So I'm just hoping that the city will not do the same mistakes again by just putting a municipal housing very concentrated in one place, because it's just gets the stigma going. I don't know what will happen next, but this project is quite, it's a precedent how this real estate developer actually was willing to do this. And one of the reasons why they did this is that it's a company, how you call it? So basically the people who are there, they're not locals, they're from London themselves, and they were living in a housing estate like this one. And they saw that if they're not going to prevent this, let's say ghetto happening, then they will lose this place, and the real estate prices will also go down. So it's a long-term process. If you want to know more, please do. But yes, later.